Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette post-game Steelers show here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on our YouTube channel, Facebook Live. You can also follow us along on your favorite podcasting apps later. But we're live here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, filling in for Adam Bittner today. Normally, he's our host, but Adam needs some days off, so we got his back. But joined, as always, by the man himself, Paul Zeise. He's here with me. We're going to break down the Steelers win. The most confident win I think they've had this season, Paul, 32-13. It's just the fourth time in the last 4 years they've scored 30 or more points in a game. Paul, give me your instant reaction to this offense and what it was. Is this a mirage because the Raiders are just that bad, or do the Steelers deserve some credit for actually capitalizing with some points today?
Well, the Steelers deserve credit for beating the daylights out of a bad team. That's what you're supposed to do. If you play a team that's a bad team that has a lot of guys injured, I know the Raiders were missing some key guys and everything else. I mean, they were a bad team to begin with. And here's the other thing. I don't know who in their right mind thinks Aiden O'Connell is better than Gardner Minshew, but good Lord. All of that being said, you know what you're supposed to do if you're a good team? Beat the daylights out of a bad team. And that's exactly what they did. So you give them credit for that. Offensively, Naji Harris played really, really well.
Yes,
anybody that thinks that Justin Fields should not be the starter is I don't know what they're to quote Don Nehlen from way back, they're smoking too much wacky tobacco. Because Justin Fields, to me, is the best player they have on offense. And I don't care that he only threw for 140 yards or whatever it is. How many of those plays that break down and he makes plays with his legs are Russell Wilson going to make? And that's the biggest thing. Justin Fields is one of those ultimate weapon guys. Does he got to get better at throwing the ball out of the pocket? Yeah. Does he got to get a little bit more accurate? Yeah. Does he have to make some better decisions from time to time? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, he gives you the best chance to win. So there's no reason in the world not to have him as your starting quarterback.
I hear you there.
That being said, I mean, listen, the defense gave up the drive to begin the game. And then after that, they just did what you're supposed to do. Who was the running back from New Hampshire that fumbled? I mean, they're coming at you with Aiden O'Connell. Basically, they're coming at you with a rookie tight end who's really, really good.
Yep.
And a bunch of other guys that stink. And for the most part, they had their one scripted drive where they were able to go down and score. And after that, the Steelers absolutely dominated them. So, you know, the offense got a short field on an interception. They got a short field on a fumble. They got a short field on a block punt. They converted those into at least 13, if not 17, whatever it was. I don't even remember. I think 17 or 16 or 17 points. You should score more than 30. So I thought all around they played a very, very good game. After the first drive where they gave up a touchdown, I thought they played a really, really good game on defense. They played a very good game on offense. They got a couple of fortunate calls, but you know what? Part of that is because the Raiders are maybe the stupidest team I've ever seen. And you know, I mean, the two roughing the passer calls, I thought one was tough. It was a tough call, but it was the right call. But neither one of those needed to make contact the way they made contact. They had to play. In fact, they got an interception. The one call that I think was really bad. And if it went against the Steelers, I think Steeler fans would be justified in complaining about it. Was
the illegal man downfield?
The man downfield that took the touchdown off. But you know what? I mean, the Steelers were going to win this game regardless of that. That was a tough call. But the two roughing the passer calls, they were just stupid plays by the Raiders. A couple other plays that I thought was dumb. I thought Aiden O'Connell made some really bad throws. And you know what? When you're handing the ball off to the guy from New Hampshire, I forget what his name is, it's a bad day for them. So the Steelers did what they had to do, which was win a game. And, you know, we've gotten conditioned to them getting out of stadiums with, by winning by the skin of their teeth. Well, this was a game where they actually just went out and pounded somebody. So, that was a really good thing to see.
I agree here. A reminder, this show is brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors. Go to Pella for all your windows and doors there. This show also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and his bestest lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. Paul, we're getting a lot of comments here and there, but I think I want to start off with is talking about Naji Harris in this run game. Naji Harris finished the game 14 carries, 106 yards, averaging 7.6 per carry, a touchdown, had a 36-yard run. I think he had like at least 3 runs over 10 yards, maybe even 4. Justin Fields also 11 carries, 59 yards for 2 touchdowns. Jaylen Warren wasn't able to get going. He had 6 carries for 7 yards, but it seemed like when the Steelers were able to get the offensive line for the mistakes that they do make in this game, because there were mistakes on their part, it seems like they were finally able to create space for the run game to work. But I also think part of this is also Arthur Smith. In the first half, you saw him throwing on first down a little bit more. And even if they didn't hit, some of them started to, and then the Raiders couldn't just run blitz you every first down. And I think that gave the Steelers offensive line a little bit more room to work. And when they get more room to work, Naji Harris gets more room to work, and you see things going there. Do you think the Steelers maybe figured something out there like, hey, if we just don't run every first down play, like they didn't do it last week against the Cowboys. They split it up well against them. They just didn't hit on any of them. I think this might be a formula to more easily get the run game going, just not in the way they had been the first couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said about that. I thought overall they mixed it up a little bit more, Chris. I thought the first series of the game, they went right down to about the 40-yard line. They got real conservative and kicked the field goal. But after that, they were more aggressive, I thought. They threw the ball around a little bit more. They spread it out a little bit more. Outside of the ridiculously asinine attempt at a trick play, I thought that Arthur. Yeah, I thought. Well, even if it does work, they were moving the ball at that point. They were moving it just traditional methods. They were running it well. They were passing it well. There was no reason to throw in that nonsensical trick play. You throw a trick play in when things aren't working, desperate, or if things are working really, really well, and you've scored a couple of touchdowns, and you're going for that dagger type play, maybe. But in that situation, it made no sense. But other than that, really, I thought he called a really good game. I thought that was the most important thing to see was, hey, they throw it a little bit more. They loosen some things up a little bit more. The Raiders are missing a couple of guys on defense. I get that. But you know what? The offense
or the Steelers.
The offense was a less predictable than it has been. That's the biggest thing. And if you're less predictable, then you're going to have more success doing whatever it is you're trying to do.
Agreed. Let's also talk about the quarterback situation. You said earlier this show you feel like anyone who thinks Justin Fields needs to be replaced is crazy. Well, that's something that's going on right now in our comment section here on YouTube. People are going back and forth about Justin Fields. Some people think he got bailed out by some penalties, but is getting bailed out by penalties just the penalties happening. He did have that interception that was called back on the roof of the bay. If that penalty doesn't happen, that's a crucial turning point in the game there. But some people also point like, hey, yeah, he was bailed out at one time, but he also led 32 points of offense. That doesn't happen too often for the Steelers. And I think there's some people wondering, are his legs more important to the Steelers offense than what Russell Wilson's arm can bring? Because Paul, I will say, before those touchdown drives in the second half, there were some questions I thought about how Justin Fields was playing. He did have a touchdown at the end of the first half, but there were some open guys being missed. There were some opportunities there that he didn't capitalize on. And there were times I was like, man, he leaves the door open. But let's face it, when you go look at the drive chart here, at the end of the first half, touchdown. Start of the second half, field goal. Granted that you wanted to get a touchdown there, but you followed that with a touchdown, a punt, a touchdown, and a field goal. That's in the second half, you had one punt in your offense. That's what the Steelers want. They want just possessing the ball, keeping control of the game, and making it so your defense isn't tired like they were last week against the Cowboys. You're settled that, like, hey, Justin Fields is the starter until something terrible happens, or is he the starter no matter what?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about it is, to me, there's no reason to make a change. Mm-hmm. I think his legs are very valuable.
They are.
I look at the play where they scored a touchdown on fourth down. I mean, Russell Wilson doesn't score there. If the play breaks down, it's over. He probably gets tackled, and they don't score at all. Maybe they actually don't even think about going for it. Maybe the fact that Justin Fields can ad-lib the way he does and run a little bit is why they went for it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, to me, I look at Russell Wilson, and I think that his legs are really not going to be a factor for him. So if that's the case, Justin Fields, and here's the other thing, Chris, and this is probably something we need to get into at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think Naji Harris is good. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. I think he's okay. I think he's solid.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a guy that can be your feature back. I think George Pickens is okay. I mean, I think
he dropped the touchdown. It was when the game was basically over, but I've
been a lot less enamored with him than some people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Beyond those two guys, I think the Steelers' skill position players are incredibly mediocre. I just do. I mean, so to me, why take Justin Fields and his ability to run and his ability to do the things he does with his legs? Mm-hmm. Why take him out of the equation when I just don't think you have many other really difference maker type players out there? I just don't.
No, I think that's part of the problem here is if the Steelers want to be able to make plays, who can you trust? Does Russell Wilson's arm open up more opportunities? Because you know what? I do feel this. I feel like Calvin Austin's underutilized. There were times last week he was getting open and not getting the ball. This week he got open and got the ball a couple times. But I think part of it is just the chemistry of when guys are getting open, how the offensive line's holding up, because there were also times they were getting beat. And granted, Max Crosby is a bad dude. I think he's one of the guys you could say are closest to TJ Watt in the NFL. And we'll get to TJ Watt in the defense in a minute here. But I do feel like, especially with the Steelers situation right now, it's tough to pull Justin Fields when his legs are winning you and getting you wins in situations and buying you more time. Now,
right.
I do think that Russell Wilson should be in consideration if Justin Fields is just having a very bad day and you need a spark in a second half and you're just not getting anything. I think that should not be out of the question. But I'm kind of with you right now. Justin Fields just put up 32 points. Do you not reward that do you like punish him for that by benching him? I feel like that would be a tough message right now for the Steelers, considering how they've struggled on offense. Also, after this game, the Steelers are averaging 20.7 points per game. That's not a whole lot, but that's more than they've had in each of their last 3 seasons before this.
Right. I mean, I think the big thing is, if I'm not mistaken, do they have the Jets next?
Yep, the Jets and the Giants at home.
The Jets and then the Giants, yeah. So, listen, they have an opportunity to get to 6-2, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. Next week, they'll play. The Jets have a pretty good defense. They're okay.
They do.
Although they got rid of their defensive play caller. I mean, I think, right? I mean, it is what it is. But my point is, those are 2 very winnable games against, 2 teams that aren't very good. Aaron Rodgers is 40 and looks every bit of it. And then Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones. So if they get to 6-2 basically at the halfway mark, I don't know how anyone could be upset about what they're doing. To me, you keep playing Justin Fields as long as he continues to win games. They go out against the Jets next week. They look terrible. They're not moving the ball. They lose the game. Okay, maybe then going into, the Giants game, you at least open the competition up. But there is absolutely zero reason, in my mind at least, and that's just me, for Justin Fields to be replaced right now, because I think given what he's got to work with and given what they have on offense, he gives you the best chance to win. You say whatever you want to say about anything else. He gives you the best chance to win. And if he gives you the best chance to win, why are we worried about style points? Today they actually put some points up on the board. They got some help from the Raiders, but they finally put some points up on the board. But my point is, if they win 10-9 today, guess what? I still go with Justin Fields, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, especially with the Steelers, especially still kind of early in the season, is winning games. Yeah. And if you keep winning, I mean, I think the Falcons, or I think the Saints scored like 35 points or something today, and they lost by 20 or something. So who cares? At the end, at the end of the day, I'm glad Derek Carr. Was it Derek Carr who played? I don't even know who played. I just saw the scoreboard.
Spencer Rattler actually played that.
Okay, so I'm glad Spencer Rattler put however many points he put on the board. They lost. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, did Drake May put up 21 points? Is that what they scored today? 3 touchdowns, wonderful. 20 of 20, 33, 240. They lost. Who cares? You know what I mean? So all I'm trying to say is the Steelers are never going to be a team that we're going to ever basically say, oh, well, style points matter. They don't. Mike Tomlin, this year basically has made it very clear we're going to win games ugly and win as many as we can. So I don't understand why, if you're 4-2, and I look at the next two games that you have on your schedule and say, there's a very, very, very good chance you have a shot to get to 6-2. Mm-hmm. And if you get to 6-2, you have done what you had to do through the quote unquote early, easy part of your season or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
Then you got the Commanders, which that's a game that looks a lot more difficult today than it did at the beginning of the season, just because Jaden Daniels has been so good. But that's a winnable game too, if you think about it. So, I mean, and then you get into the Ravens and everybody else. I get it. But what we said was they need to win games early. And guess what? Justin Fields right now gives them the best chance to win games.
They're 4-2 right now, tied with the Ravens for best record in the AFC North. Right now, if the playoffs were to start, they would be, I think they would actually have they would be the first wild card team. Because the Ravens technically edged them out because they've won a division game. The Steelers haven't played one. But either way, the Steelers right now are in a driver's seat position to control their own destiny. Like you said, the Jets and the Giants at home are two matchups that I think the Steelers should be favored in. And as long as no other crazy injuries happen, we got to see what happened to Zach Frazier. That's a big thing that could have a long-term impact. Zach Frazier, it was reported he did say he wanted to come back in. The Steelers held him out. I think that's a good sign. But Zach Frazier is also a tough son of a gun. So he's a guy who could be, saying, put me back out there when there's something worse going on. We'll see how that plays out. But let's flip to the defense, Paul, because, man, this defense, they gave up an opening touchdown drive and everyone's like, whoa, this defense is so bad. They're so bad. And then they come out and they shut down the Raiders for 8 consecutive drives, including 3 turnovers. Also, I thought it was impressive. This is the second straight game where they've gotten 3 turnovers. The difference was last week, 0 points off those turnovers. This week, 17 points off those turnovers. Big help there. But Paul, TJ Watt, he doesn't get sacks in this game, but he brings pressures, he attracts double teams, and he forced 2 fumbles, both of which were recovered by the Steelers. Do you think this defense is sustainable throughout the rest of the season? Because this is also a game where they've won without Alex Highsmith or Nick Herbig on the other side of Watt.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think their defense is going to be good all year, if that's your question. I do. I think they're schemed well. I think they play well. I think they've got good players. God, they spend so much money on that side of the ball, they should be good.
Right.
I thought the second fumble by the Raiders, which is credit to TJ Watt, okay, was an example of stupidity on the coaching staff of the Raiders and everything else. First of all, okay, I'm not sure if it was a touchdown or not right before where the guy dove for the line. But if you're Antonio Pierce, I got to believe you got to at least talk to the refs. Maybe not throw your challenge flag, but say, hey, should you review that, right? To pause things. Second of all, you absolutely have to score a touchdown there if you're them. Can you explain to me if you've ever seen, let's hurry up and try and run through something on a fire drill, you know what I mean, to try and catch the defense off guard? Have you ever seen that actually work? Because usually more often than not, what I see are broken plays, guys that aren't really prepared to make their blocks. The defense basically just line it up and saying, to hell with it. We're on the goal line, so we're going to jump. If we're offsides, they get an extra half a yard or an extra 6 inches towards the goal line. It doesn't matter, but we're just going to time it up because they're going to try and go fast. It usually is a disaster for the offense. So to me, if you watch that play, half the Raiders didn't know what the hell they were doing. Half were going one way, half were going the other way. And obviously TJ Watt just blew the thing up. I honestly watch some of these games and I say, these guys are paid millions of dollars. These coaches, what in the world are they doing? You know, that to me was the turning point in the game. Well, obviously the illegal man downfield was a tough call. That was a tough one too. But to me, I thought, you know what? If the good news is if the Raiders are giving the Steelers some gifts, which they did a little bit, the Steelers were able to take advantage of it. You know, there's times when you get a gift and you can't take advantage of it. There's times when the Raiders would have went fast like that and the Steelers wouldn't have fumbled the ball or whatever. Or, I mean, the Raiders wouldn't have fumbled the ball. Or like last week, the ball would have bounced back to the Raiders quarterback and, you wouldn't have got a turnover. So you were fortunate, in the fact that you were able to make a play. And then, you know what? You got to bounce your way. You got to take advantage of that, which they did. Just like you have to take advantage of it when you block a punt, or you have to take advantage of it when you knock when you punch the ball out or when you get an interception. I mean, those are things the Steelers defense is pretty good at. They are good at making plays. They're good at changing a game. They're good at making high impact plays. I don't correct me if I'm wrong, but they haven't scored yet, right? This year.
The defense, I don't think they have. No.
Right, but they put the offense in great positions with their game-changing plays, their sacks, their interceptions, their fumbles, all of that stuff. To me, I look at it and I basically say, I don't see why it's not sustainable other than they will play better offenses and they will play better quarterbacks than, Aiden freaking O'Connell, who I cannot believe – I cannot believe anybody who has half a brain, whose job is tied to how good their quarterback is, would pick that guy over Gardner Minshew. I don't care how many interceptions he threw last week.
Yeah, I look at this and I think that, hey, the Raiders came out with a plan and the Steelers dominated them. It's to your point. It doesn't matter. It's whoever's out in front of you, you got to find a way to win, and you got to find a way to win comfortably. I can't think of too many times, Paul, where the Steelers fans could sit at the start of the fourth quarter and be like, this feels pretty good right now. That hasn't happened until recently. The Steelers have had to win a lot at the last second, last 5 minutes of play. This was more so the Steelers. This was more so the Steelers controlling this game throughout the second half. And yes, it started a little bumpy. The offense didn't get things going, and there were certainly mistakes that could have been capitalized on by the Raiders, but they weren't, and the Steelers found a way to win. I also think that on top of that, TJ Watt forcing those 2 fumbles, I thought there were some really good jobs overall by the Steelers defense, taking away the run throughout this game. You saw Alexander Madison. He had 14 carries, 33 yards, just 2.4 yards per carry. They really took that away for the most part in this game, especially after that opening drive where they were able to really just move their way down the field real quickly. And then again, on the other end of things, they were able to cover guys up pretty well. I think they took away things from Aiden O'Connell. There were times where I thought Aiden O'Connell could have made bigger mistakes and thrown into the coverages that the Steelers were setting up, but he was throwing the ball away, trying to live for the next down. The Steelers just didn't give them too many more chances to do that. They hold the Raiders to 2 of 11 on third downs right there. So I think that's a very good sign for the Steelers defense. But to your point, they're going to face better offenses than this down the road. They're going to do that. But right now, as a defense, you're playing well. You're keeping teams limited. And I mean, if you look at the Steelers' schedule this season and how they've played, they've, for the most part, their defense has been able to lock in. They gave up 20 points last week, but in a game where they were on the field for 80 plays because the offense, couldn't stay off the field. They gave up 27 points against the Colts, and that was easily their worst performance. But in their games they've won, 13 points allowed today, 10 points allowed to the Chargers, 6 to the Broncos, 10 to the Falcons. It's clear there's a script there. Now, the question for me, Paul, is can this offense maybe not score 32 points, but if they can get closer to averaging 24 points a game while playing this kind of defense, can that be the type of team that finally gets the Steelers into more than just a slightly over 500 record, maybe a home playoff game, and maybe even a playoff win this year?
Well, I think if they can average 24 points a game, yeah, they're going to be a team that I would, if you tell me they're going to average 24 points a game, I'd probably pick them right now to win the AFC North. Whoa. To be honest. I mean, I do. I mean, the thing about the Ravens, they're so dynamic at times because Lamar Jackson is so dynamic at times.
Yeah.
But they do so many dumb things. You want to talk about dumb football teams.
Mm-hmm.
They hold themselves back with some of the stupidest things I've ever seen a team do. Some come in from the sideline because for all the talk about John Harbaugh being a genius, I've rarely ever come away from watching a Ravens game saying, "Wow, Harbaugh was a genius today." Usually, he does 2 or 3 stupid things. They put the ball. They're very sloppy with the ball. They're sloppy at times on defense. They get penalties at bad times. You know what? I think if the Steelers average 24 points a game, they're going to be a really pretty consistent team that wins a lot of games. And you know what? I think I would pick them to win the AFC North. And if they win the AFC North,
then they do host a playoff game.
That means they would host a playoff game, right? Because the 3 winners, the 3 winners all host a game.
Yeah, all division winners host at least one playoff game.
Yeah, so I mean, even if they were the 4 seed,
you
know. They would host the 5 seed, and to me, if you look at who the 5 seed would be, I mean, of course, it would be their luck. It would be the Ravens, but you know, at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying. My point is, I would pick them. If you told me they're going to average 24 points a game from this point on, Chris, I would tell you they're going to win the AFC North.
I think that's a very interesting point to see if they can do that. But let's look around the AFC North right now, because part of why we've been saying for months now that the Steelers have to start strong, they have to come out the gate strong, is because of the end of the season schedule. But let's look at that end of the season schedule now, because after the bye, they play the Jets and the Giants the next 2 weeks at home, night games, situations where the Steelers could win. The Steelers then go to Washington to play the Commanders. Like you said earlier, that's not a gimme game. That's a game. And I mean, no game is gimme in the NFL, but the Commanders are playing some good football right now. They took the Ravens to the mat today. Then you got basically the run of the AFC North: Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns again. Then you get the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bengals. That looked very daunting at the start of the season. But right now, the Browns are sitting at 1-5, playing absolutely terrible football. They lost the Eagles today. The Bengals are 1-4. We're recording this before Sunday Night Football happens, and so if they drop one against the Giants, they could be 1-5. But even if they're not, they're 2-4. They haven't played great football. And the Ravens, for as good as they are, they're both them and the Steelers are 4-2. The Steelers have dominated that rivalry for the last 4 years. They're 7-1 against them in the last 4 years. I think that as long as the Steelers don't suffer major injuries and that the offense shows steps forward, I'm not saying they become dominant or top 10 or anything like that, but if the offense takes steps forward and they can get to being like a middle of the league offense and the defense stays in an elite status and they're still holding opponents to less than 20 per game regularly, I do think this could be a team that wins the division and looks to be a threat in the AFC when it comes December and January.
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't write the Bengals off just yet.
I'm not writing them off.
No. What I'm saying is I think, you know, the first game of the year was obviously Joe Burrow was hurt for a lot of last year. Came back. They looked rusty. That was a really bad performance by them against the Patriots. They lost 16-10. Ugly loss. Since then, however, they took the Chiefs to the wire, lost by 1 point.
They did.
They were probably the first team to figure out this Jaden Daniels kid is pretty good with Washington. And they scored 33 points in that game. They killed the Panthers, you know, who stink. And then, you know what? What's his name? Zach Taylor? Is that their coach's name? I would have, if I was the owner, I would have fired him last week for the way he handled the end of the game, because they should have beat the Ravens. They just completely gagged on themselves and handed it to them. That was a game they had won. And so they lost in overtime because Zach Taylor is an idiot. But the bottom line to me is Joe Burrow is still pretty good. That offense is really good.
Yes, he is.
You know what? They play the Giants and then they play the Browns next week. If they can win those 2 games, I think those are the kind of things where you build some momentum and you start getting going. So I think they're going to be a factor. I'm not saying they're going to finish ahead of the Steelers. The Browns, however, are a different animal altogether. Yeah. I'm actually looking at their schedule, having a hard time figuring out when is their next win going to come. I mean, you tell me when their next win is going to come. Okay, ready? Bengals, I think they lose. Ravens, I think they lose. Chargers, I think they lose. At the Saints, they probably lose. Then they play the Steelers, they lose. At Denver, they probably lose. At the Steelers again, they probably lose. The Chiefs, then at the Bengals, the Dolphins, and at the Ravens.
Maybe the Dolphins.
Honestly, think about this. Not only is the Deshaun Watson contract the worst in the history of sports, I was talking to someone the other day about Giancarlo Stanton's, from the Yankees for his contract, 13 years, and I mean, he's at 30. He was 8 years into his career when they gave him a 13-year deal. I mean, these next 3 years, the Yankees have to pay him $32 million next year, $26 million the year after, and $25 million the year after. That's still not a worse contract than Deshaun Watson, because they at least got like 9 really good years out of Giancarlo Stanton. These last 3 or 4 years, they're going to eat it. I get it. Of course, if he keeps hitting like he did, in the NL and the ALDS, then it's all worth it again. But my point is, not only is that the worst contract, Deshaun Watson's contract, but Chris, had they just stayed with Baker Mayfield,
he's lighting it up. He just dropped a 50 burger for the Buccaneers.
They would be so much better off. So the Browns are a mess. I know Myles Garrett has some kind of foot injury that he's like kind of trying to play through, or whatever's going on with him. Deshaun Watson's terrible. The offensive line, is falling apart. The defense was supposed to be a strength, and it's bad. That's a bad football team. So you would expect the Steelers to be able to sweep them. The Ravens, the Steelers have played well against the Ravens. I mean, I get a kick out of every year people talking about the Ravens, and I'll be honest with you, because they've got Lamar Jackson, I think they have a better chance to win the Super Bowl than the Steelers. But because when you have the Steelers. But they against the Steelers, they're like 1 in their last 7, or what are they? Like 1 in 7 in the last 8, or something, right?
Yes.
So to me, it's a weird situation where the Steelers own the Ravens. If you ask me right now, who do I think is got a better chance of winning the AFC title? I would tell you the Ravens, because they've got a dynamic playmaker in Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and the Steelers, we're still trying to figure out what they have. But in terms of playing the Ravens, I think at worst the Steelers will split with them. So I honestly believe the Steelers right now, if you ask me, should be a slight favorite to win the AFC North.
Wow. Paul Zeise calling his shot, saying the Steelers should be a slight favorite to win the AFC. To your point about Deshaun Watson's contract, I want to go back to this real quick. He is a $27.9 million cap hit this year. Next year, it is a $72.9 million cap hit, $46 million guaranteed in 2025 and 2026. So you can't even get out. Like, if you cut him, that means you are paying $46 million for the next 2 years to nobody. And that is why, to your point, it might be the worst contract in the history of sports. And the Browns are having to eat it right now. They are 1-5. And like you said, I'm not sure where their next win gets. They get the Bengals and Ravens and Chargers all at home the next 3 games, but I don't think that they should win any 3 of those. If they do, what's funny is the Steelers. If you're the Steelers, you might want them to win one of those 2 games against the AFC North team, so that they could bump the Ravens down or knock the Bengals off and keep them from catching back up. But to your point, I do think that this is a division that now, with the way the Steelers have played, it could be something that they could actually win this year, which I don't think too many people had at the start of the season.
No, not at all. But I think, like I said, I look at how the season's starting to play out. I just feel like the Steelers might be the best team the Steelers might be the best equipped team to win the AFC North.
I like
the best team. The best team might be the Ravens, just because, again, when you have that guy at quarterback, it's completely a different situation. People keep trying to tell me that the Chiefs are overrated, and I'm like, you still have to beat Patrick Mahomes. I don't care who else they have, you still have to beat that guy. Even though he's erratic and he's not that good sometimes because he loses his mind, you still have to beat Josh Allen, because when he's good, he might be the best guy in the entire league. When he's playing at his best, he's that good. When you got a guy like that, okay, but if you're asking me week after week after week after week after week, the consistency and all the other stuff that goes in it, plus the head-to-head twice, I like the Steelers' chances better than the Ravens in the AFC North.
That's a very interesting take. We will have you covered all week long as the Steelers get ready for their showdown with the Jets next week. But the Steelers, as Paul said, 4-2 right now, tied with the Ravens atop the AFC North, looking strong. Can they keep it up? We'll keep that talk going here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Paul, thanks so much for joining us here on the post-game show, and thank you all for joining us here on the live stream on here on Pittsburgh on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's YouTube page and Facebook Live and wherever else you're checking this out. I'm Chris Carter. He's Paul Zeise. Again, read all of our work at post-gazette.com. And also, reminder, the North Shore Drive podcast, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. Subscribe everywhere there. We'll see you again here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's YouTube channel. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.